My name is Jordan Newton. I am located in Central Virginia, so right in the Richmond area. And as for what I do, right now I'm working client work. I am a senior manager and engineer. Mendix is great because it's as low code as you want it to be. If you really don't want to touch any code, you can get in and just use Studio Pro as is, everything that's in there for you. But, and this does happen a lot with our clients because they have such specific needs and we are a talented enough team to do it, you can strip all the low code off, take that lid off, get in there, write actual Java, JavaScript, anything that you need. If you need to make your own widgets, you need to get in there and write actual Java code to perform a really complex function. You can get in there. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. It's fully supported. It's encouraged. So yeah, I think that's what makes it so powerful, is that it's as low code as you want it to be. If you want to get in and do any like hard coding yourself, by all means, it's all there. It's all supported for you. So Kinetech has quite a few GovTech solutions out there. A lot of them are related to helping families struggling financially due to COVID-related challenges. One of the projects that I worked on was for the state of Michigan. It was the Sarah Housing Portal. When it was fully opened up and we were getting tons and tons of applicants, and not just applicants, but people also working on the system internally, as in, actual government employees, performance issues were starting to come in pretty regularly, to the point where there were times, especially in the morning, when everyone would log in and the server, like the entire app would just freeze. And so I got in there and I did a full analysis and teardown of how exactly the app was structured and why it was causing issues. And essentially the way that it was initially stood up for was fine for the original GovTech implementations we had, which were much smaller. It was cities, it was much, much smaller government programs. But of course, opening it up to a whole state, especially Michigan, it's quite big. If you just think of the numbers of like Detroit alone, huge. That with that increase in applications and all the associated data along with applications, it's, like the utilities, the specific receipts and bills and everything. It's a lot of data. When users would hit that page upon logging in, they would be served every report in the system instantaneously. And that's the first thing that you would see when you logged in. So if you can imagine at 9 a.m, when every worker would log in and be served up every single record that there was, and especially because there were constraints on that data, it was bringing everything down. So one of the things I did is I completely restructured the entire application while still preserving all of the data that was in there, because those were live applications. That was people's livelihoods. We had to be super careful with it. We couldn't impact their applications that would keep them from losing their home or keeping their utilities on. So restructuring all that, essentially playing Jenga, removing an entire bottom from the tower, rearranging it while keeping it from falling down. Probably the most challenging thing I've ever done in my career, period. But I mean, it worked. We did not have any issues after that. It was a huge effort. I learned a lot, of course, taking that into every other project I've worked on to build. Very forward-facing, very scaling at mind whenever I design any architecture now. So yeah, that's probably the most challenging. Yeah, it would actually definitely be that one. So I didn't stand up that project. I definitely came in much, much later, just because I joined the company later. But getting put on that project and then having to essentially help redesign the entire architecture beneath it. I'm proud of it, not just because of the challenge of it, but because of the actual real world implications of that. So getting in there, seeing the numbers, and especially creating the reports, and a lot of the reporting was seeing, like how many families that are single parents with children, or parents with children with special needs, or veterans. We had to track a lot of those numbers, and seeing the percentages and the raw dollar amounts that were coming out of it. I was like, wow, we've built something that is actually saved lives. So it's probably one of the best things I've ever worked on, just because of that real world impact, and knowing that we've played a significant part in helping people out there. Yeah, as for what I'm currently working on industry vertical, it's an intersection of financial and auto. So right now, yeah, I'm working on GoFi, rolling off GoFi shortly. It's a very interesting piece of software that helps kind of bridge the gap between buyers and dealers and the financial institutions as well. So a lot of times when you go to buy a car, there's a lot of back and forth that you don't see that really kind of inflates the time that you're sitting there in front of the desk and watching your guy type in a whole bunch of stuff on the computer, wait however many minutes for a response. So the idea was to really trim that time down to seconds. So that's what I've been working on, helping GoFi get this new kind of shake up to the industry off the ground and out the door to really change how the car buying experience is for pretty much everyone. Consumers like you and me, dealers that actually sell and handle the process, banking institutions, it's a full all hands on deck kind of app experience. I think it really took that first trip to Mendix headquarters. So before I was with Kinetech, I was with Genworth Financial, and we were trying to be a small kind of Mendix partner with a new app initiative that we were pushing internally. Me and my boss, we took a trip up to Mendix in Boston for pretty much, it wasn't a weekend, but it was essentially, 3 days in the middle of the week, and had private one-on-one workshops with some of their developers to help us hash out our ideas, what we wanted to do, and explain how to get from point A to point B. And the way that they explained it, of course, Mendix is low code, but the people that work on it and design it are full, all code programmers. It's basically just an abstraction of Java. So the way that they were able to explain it in terms that I understand, and I understood because coming from a full CS background, I was a full, traditional developer, code always, really reframed it in my mind as, oh, this is just the same programming I've been doing my whole life. It's just framed in a different way. So that was probably that aha moment. It wasn't working on any specific thing or any individual, solving a puzzle. It was just kind of sitting down and talking with the developers behind the actual platform itself. The architecture side. So yeah, after having that talk with them and them explaining how it's all structured and me being able to translate that to what I had already known coming out of data structures from my CS degree, I feel I have a really, really strong understanding of how to set up a good, scalable, robust groundwork for applications. So setting up the domain model, building that architecture, I'm always thinking about how do we make sure that this doesn't become a bloated monster? How do we make sure that this can scale up to, best case scenario? I always keep that in mind whenever I'm building pretty much anything, especially coming off the Michigan project, where I saw what happens when you have a more kind of tempered expectation, or you try to translate a small project to a big scale without really considering the implications. That's always in my mind. So I think that creates my superpower. I try to always be forward thinking and optimistic of best case scenario. If this pops off, we got to make sure this thing can handle it. All the time, we encounter, other projects made by other Mendix engineers or have to work with other Mendix engineers in other houses. And I see it all the time. It's they'll do something that seems very standard and, is, perfectly suitable for a general use case. But in that specific instant, I'll have to, be like, hey, maybe we should consider something else. And then explain why. It does take a bit of extra, research and initiative to understand how Mendix works underneath the hood, and that makes you a better developer, of course, in it. So, low barrier of entry. It's a good thing and a bad thing. So, you kind of have to be your own boss and make sure you fully understand what you're working with. Pretty much what I just said. If you want to be a low-code developer, you still have to understand how it all works. Mendix is good because it's just an abstraction of typical Java stuff. If you really want to be good at it, learn your data structures, just typical object-oriented data structures, dive into it, understand how it works, why it does, figure out why things are better in certain situations as opposed to other situations. Being a strong developer means you understand not how to do something, but why something is the best in a particular instance. So I really encourage anyone that wants to do it. Data structures, you got to know your data structures. That will make you better in any way. Some other code somewhere else. I mean, I'd always be a developer. That's what I wanted to be. That's what I've always wanted to be. So, I mean, I don't know if I wasn't working in Mendix. I've joked before that if code hadn't gotten me, it would have been physics. When I was younger, I always wanted to be someone that designed and built roller coasters. So who knows, if this doesn't pan out, I'll look at some of like the coaster companies out there and be, hey, you need a developer. I can figure it out. I'll get in there. So that's probably what it would be.